In today's practical, we are going to study displacement reactions. During displacement reactions, what happens is a metal, in this case you can see this screw is made up of iron, will displace copper ion, Cu2 plus ions, from its aqueous solution. And what it will form is, it will form iron sulfate and copper metal. So let's see what happens. Now the first step in this reaction is to make a solution of copper 2 sulfate. So let's dissolve some copper 2 sulfate. Now what you can see is a blue solution of copper 2 sulfate. Now we'll divide this into two equal halves, more or less equal. So now we have two test tubes they contain a blue solution. Okay. Now let's carry out the displacement reaction. Now what we'll do is, into one of the solutions we'll put this nail. You can see this nail or this screw it has a silvery color, a grayish color, which is the color of iron. Now when we put this into the copper 2 sulfate solution, we just do it gently so it doesn't break the test tube. We will leave this for the reaction to continue, and then we will see the effect, the final effect. Now after 15 minutes, this is what we observe. You can see here that the iron nail, which was silvery grey in color, has now become brown. Now this is not rust. You must be very clear that this is not rust. What's on the iron nail is copper metal. In this solution there are blue colored copper ions, Cu2 plus, and the copper ions have now become copper metal, Cu, which is a solid, and it's formed a coating on the iron nail. And you can see at the bottom of the test tube there is also a lot of copper which is deposited. So a lot of copper is deposited at the bottom of this test tube. Now if you look at the change in color, this has a very slight green tint, okay, whereas this is blue. This is the original solution. You can see the blue color is definitely gone, and there's a very slight green tint which is ferrous sulfate. Let's finally analyze the products of this reaction. Now in this reaction, iron Fe displaces Cu2 plus from the copper sulfate solution to form iron sulfate, which is now dissolved in this light green solution because it's of a low concentration, and it will form copper metal, which is at the bottom. So the overall reaction is Fe plus CuSO4 gives FeSO4 plus Cu, which is at the bottom and also coated on the iron nail. Now this is not rust. Please be very clear about this. Even though it looks like the nail has rusted in 15 minutes, it's actually a displacement reaction, and the iron nail is now coated with copper metal. Now let's separate these so you can have a clear view of that. Now first what we'll do is we'll gently decant this test tube and pour the iron sulfate solution into this test tube, into the new one. Now this is the slightly green iron sulfate, FeSO4, ferrous sulfate solution. So this is one of the products. And now what we have in this, I'll separate this further. I'll show you clearly what is the product of this reaction. Now you can see here, this is the iron nail, which was silvery grey in color. It's now coated with copper, and even here you can see a residue of copper metal on this paper, which is reddish brown in color, okay, and you can see some of it is also on my fingers. So this is what happens when a displacement reaction occurs. Now remember, a displacement reaction will always depend on the reactivity series, okay, and the reactivity series is a series of metals, and metals higher up, I'll display the reactivity series on the screen. So you can see that since iron is above copper in the reactivity series, it can displace copper from its aqueous solution. This has copper ions, so the Fe, that's the iron, can displace copper from this solution to form copper metal and iron sulfate.